What is going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indy Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Heath Mulligan, joined by the man who is always working on something, making things better, coming up with new ideas, Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you today, my fine friend?
I'm good, man. That was a weird weekend with basically no shows. There'll be some stories that went on. I know there was basically just wiped out Friday completely. But I'm glad to see a couple guys did get to run this weekend. Got some stuff we'll cover, on the new show. But we'll get to that in a minute. So,
yes, it was. I had, you and I both had a full weekend playing different things, and sitting on the couch watching movies was not on my bucket list. But that's what I ended up doing, and sometimes that's what you need. You know what you need, fans? You need to join our Patreon. Patreon.com/tapped-out-pod. You need to join. You can join for free because now you're getting this show where we're kind of talking about the big news stories. It's more analysis, I would say. And then for free at Patreon, you're going to get it used to be the 5-star Georgia Indy Guide, and now it's going to be the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight, where we talk about the shows from the past weekend and the upcoming shows. As you know, most of the shows got snowed out this last weekend, but we will be recording that. This is a little bit weird week, but you need to join Patreon. But if you just want to watch on YouTube, get tapped-out-pod.com. But again, the only place to get that Georgia Wrestling Spotlight show is on Patreon. And Nick, the other night you were at AEW, and on the way home recorded some thoughts, and our patrons got access to that.
Yeah, like we're trying to do, like I said, any little moment we can in the car ride home, stuff like that from shows, whether it's national or, and that kind of fell in our lap. I mean, I want to, again, I know and it is, so I guess I was going to say it is indie related in a way because, Scott Barnett of Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, hit me up last minute. He had an extra ticket, so I got to tag along with him and the family. So, it was fun. That was a fun thing. It was super last minute. So I appreciate his hospitality. But yeah, man, it was cool to see them in a smaller venue. I know that there wasn't a bad seat in the house. But look, if you want to hear what I thought, in detail, because even look on the national show, we talk big issues as well. Yeah. But if you really wanted to hear me dive into it a little bit, it was patreon.com/tapped-out-pod. It's the best place. And, so even for the national stuff, dude, it's not just the indie stuff where we're giving a little behind the scenes stuff too.
Right. And I think with the growth of the WWE ID program, especially how that's affecting some local folks, we're always gonna be talking about that. And I do think it seems like we're entering an era where the lines are going to get blurred between independents and the major promotions. So it's a good time to be a wrestling fan.
We addressed it last week a little bit on the Tapped Out show. Myron and I did, where we talked about this new I was literally caught myself about to say the evolution of NXT Evolve. And look, I've heard a couple things, and there might be a Patreon in the near future. I think we talked about doing one where I gave you some details of things that I learned about Evolve, and I'm like, this will affect the indies more than people believe. And this week, that's a little tease for tomorrow's show. I think it may, because there's an evolution of something that I heard about the bigger brand, the NXT brand as a whole, on the CW, that I think even trickles down. And like you said, it's the lines are getting blurred to where from top to bottom, everything has changed, especially when you start, like, I think with Sean moving up to be main roster, like, creative, Scott D'Amore coming in at NXT, Gabe Sapolsky coming in at Evolve. I think Gabe Sapolsky's trick was always spotting that young, indie talent and using those in Evolve. And I think, anyway, I don't want to give away too much of it, but I think it blurring the lines is an understatement at this point.
Yes. Again, it's an exciting time to be a wrestling fan. This week we do not have this or that because we got snowed out. We're hoping to get some more of those in the coming weeks at different shows. Let's talk about the weather, Nick. What do you think some of the ramifications are going to be? You know, you had Southern Honor, which runs monthly, that canceled. SCA runs weekly. It looks like they're just bumping back
Dude,
a
let me ask
week.
you this. I wanted your take on this when I saw that, like, basically the triple threat match got bumped back a week. Um, Two questions I wanted to ask. Well, they probably tie together. Does SCA have essentially the biggest asset being a weekly show? Like, do they have the biggest advantage that literally, I mean, it was like, okay, we pushed back a week.
Yeah,
It's really not that big a deal for them. Now, imagine if you were running a bi monthly show
yeah.
and you got wiped out, like what that does to the rest of your year. It just come. But with SCA, they're like, it's cool. We'll run it all the next week. Just run it back next week. We've got creative. We just push everything back 1 week. That's it.
Well, when you run by monthly, and I know I've said this elsewhere, to me, if you're only running 6 times a year, you have you don't have a lot of space. Like to me, if you only run 6 times a year, your heavyweight championship has to be defended on every single show. Like you don't have space to where your champion and somebody else can take on the number one contender and a partner of their choice. You don't have time to kind of play around. You know, the thing with SCA is a lot of their shows, they're just it's almost like a placeholder show to get to where they're going. It's still a good show, but there may not be,
They have
big
enough
reveal or
show. It's
whatever.
kind of like, we always joke. It's kind of like, eh, hear me out. When I say it's kind of like Raw or something like that, where they've got a show every week that you're like, hey, we don't have to give them like where we are now. Let's go back to when Tower was the champion. You could get away with Tower being in a 6 man or
Yeah,
blah 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 whatever because hey, it's just 1 week. It literally is 1 week.
right.
He could think about this, and on a weekly show, you could defend your show or defend your title every fourth show, and you're still on pace with everybody else.
Yes. Yes. And it also running every week, you can have different layers. And if you've got you can have a heavyweight title storyline and you can have the Friday night title storyline and a tag team story. Like you have space to create these different characters and situations where even a monthly show, you sometimes get matches that kind of just feel like they're out of left field sometimes.
Right, you literally your tag team title match can be the main event of a show, and you could not even have they have an advantage of the champion not even having to be on the show. Like, hey, he's
Right.
got a booking somewhere else, and they're like, it's okay, it's fine. It's not the end of the world to them. Whereas we have we've been to shows where it's like, okay, if the champion's not going to be here, then we're like, oh my goodness, we're 2 months, 3 months out before he's
Yes.
back. Like, what are we going to do? What do we, that kind of thing. So to kind of answer back to my own question, I do. I think somebody running on a weekly basis has a way bigger advantage, and it's obvious. I mean, it was I get it, but I think they have the major advantage over somebody, even like Southern Honor. We were looking at that card and going, okay, well, you have to run Lev and Joe. Like that match
Yes.
still has to happen. So now you're bumped behind. Essentially your main title storyline just got shoved back 1 month essentially. So
Correct.
you either have to figure out how can we cram 2 months worth of content on one show, or do we just push everything back 1 month, or how do you trim it down? Makes more thought process, like more work involved. Now, some of the matches, and look, no disrespect to any of the matches, but we were like, okay, you could cut this match and cut this match, and it probably doesn't need to happen. You can still probably get to where you're going the next show just with a different match of some kind or whatever. I don't think you have to push the entire card back, but it does give them a situation to where, like you said, they still got to run that one match back regardless.
Right. Right. This, if I'm a independent wrestler, this last weekend makes me realize that what I get paid to wrestle should be at best my third stream of wrestling income. And so if a show gets canceled and I'm not getting my $40, $50 or whatever, that it doesn't throw my whole life in you shouldn't throw your whole life in disarray anyway. But if you're an independent wrestler, you got to figure out multiple streams of income. You got to figure out the merch. You got to figure out a Patreon. You got to figure out different stuff.
Now that's one I'm surprised you brought it up. I'm surprised more people don't have their own Patreons and like sell their own stuff out of their, because you can, by the way, if you're not aware of that, wrestlers, you can actually do a shop through your Patreon, but that's a whole other video together. But yes. I want to admire some of the guys. So there's two things I felt like were good answers in my opinion. Two things a wrestler could have done during this weekend. One, you could say, you know what? Could this, be a blessing in disguise? I can take a weekend off, rest my body, and what's 1 week? Sometimes that's enough, right? We joked about it with us. Like sometimes it's like, hey, 1 week's a good, good break.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you got guys like, Kristen Taylor, who were like, hey, I've got an opening. I've got 2 openings, whatever. Who's running? Get me the information. I can get on your show, whatever. And by the way, when we go over some of the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight, you'll see how that played out. Like some of that worked out, for him.
Yeah.
So kudos to those guys who were the hungry. And look, just because you just chose to sit home and take the break, that's not a knock. That's maybe that was a smart move for you. And I commend that. But kudos to these other guys out there, jumping on it immediately and trying to, pick up some more bookings. And especially the ones who were successful in pulling it off.
Yes. Anyway, kudos to everybody. As far as I know, everybody stayed safe. Nobody had, other than Gary Lamb's truck, which got demolished in a non-wrestling related thing. We're just glad everybody's okay there. We talked about, different, promotions doing different things. One thing you and I both like is promotions doing their own awards. We love the Georgia Wrestling History Awards. But let's talk about 2 promotions who I think they've done this. I mean, Action's been doing it several years, but I think Disruptor's been doing this a couple years. The Action Wrestling Awards were announced earlier this week, maybe yesterday and Sunday. I know McKinney over there at SouthAtlantaWrestling.com has a big part in this, and this is a fan vote, and I think I voted for some of these, maybe. But let's go through the Action Awards. Their show of the year was the April show that you and I and Myron went to, which was Action Forever. It featured Mustafa Ali versus Landon Hale. It was when the show where Manders defeated Alex Hale. Alex Hale? Am I saying? No, not Alex. Alex Kane. Sorry. Alex Kane to become the Action World Champion. That was a really, really great show.
I agree. I thought that they top to bottom, it was a good one for us all kind of to experience together because we had a great conversation about Action in the car on the way home.
Probably a match that doesn't get talked about from that show, but I think contributed to it getting show of the year was Buff and Fluff versus Slime Season. A very entertaining match. Adam Priest was your superstar of the year. That didn't catch me off guard, but I don't think Adam Priest held any titles. In Action, he was just consistently in top matches. And again, is one of our favorite wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean, top to bottom, I don't know anybody that I am we got a category that maybe this is where this guy belonged that we're going to discuss in a little bit. And I didn't even think about it until now because I do think he gets a lot of respect and a lot of, praise, and he's, been a champion and so forth and so on. But I still think, more of his career is in the front, than behind at this point. So Adam Priest I'm a real big fan of that guy.
Yeah. He was also, I think a big reason he was superstar of the year was he was voted for feud of the year with his feud versus Cruel where they had cage match. They wrestled for that IWTV world title throughout the year. And Priest was, number one contender for that a lot of the year. And that match he had with Cruel in April was just a brutal, brutal match. And you're talking about when you see these guys standing in the ring, you're almost like, how are they even going to have a match? And these guys are so good that they can pull it off. And they have such great chemistry, but not in the sense of Flair and Steamboat. When Flair and Steamboat are wrestling, it's almost like they're not trying. They are. When Priest and Cruel are wrestling, it looks like a struggle in a good way.
It's a fight.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's very much a fight. The moment of the year, this was hands down, probably not a close second. Bobby Flacco winning that Action World Heavyweight title. I think there's still a story that was such a good moment that they didn't get it to play out because of the concussion and the title change. I'm interested to see how they come back to that because Bobby Flacco is certainly a guy that deserves all the praise and all the flowers that he gets.
1,000%. I think the reason that moment is because they were so emotionally invested in him. Here's the thing: I wish more promotion, like the story of his climb, where it's been years. Like this has been not a year. It's like, but I think his ascension to the title. Some people would go like, "Oh, it's like no, dude. This has been like a day one. Like, hey, this guy's been there." And I think Bobby Flacco is the ultimate underdog. But then to climb and fight, it's almost always, and not always, but almost always, he's smaller than the guys he's in the ring with. And he's got to figure out a way to beat the big guy. Like that's what it always is. And like I said, though, I think if you go back and watch it on IWTV, you'll see how the fans are just like all in on him. And so to say like, oh, it was moment of the year, it's like I am not shocked in the least.
Bobby Flacco has that everyman quality, and just has had the full support of the fans. And I would love to see a heel turn where he just gets vicious and starts, throwing people into cars and stuff. I think that'd be good. Speaking of throwing people into cars and being vicious and doing whatever it takes to win, the Good Hand was voted as his tag team faction of the year. The night we were there, they defeated Matt Sells and Jaden Newman in a hair match. We saw Matt Sells get his head shaved.
Yeah, they stumbled a little bit as far as with Alex Kane dropping the gold or whatever, but as a whole, at some point, form or fashion, they've had a hold at the top of the promotion. They've held those tag gold. They've held so that the group as a whole, the faction as a whole. And they're not going to go down kicking and screaming, for sure. I mean, they are going to go down kicking if they go down at all. But I just, I wonder. There seems tensions at times, but then they get back on the same page. It seems like, and I think that's kind of it. I think the leadership at the top with Alex Kane's probably your reason why they are where they are on the pecking order at Action.
Yes. A young man that you and I have seen various places. Who we think has a bright future. And really just within this year, we saw loads of improvement. And that is Grayson Pierce, who was voted the Action Wrestling Newcomer of the Year. And I thought that was well-deserved.
Oh, yeah. And look, it's obviously at Action, is where he took this award home from. But we've seen it. I think one of the advantages we have is we've seen it statewide. Other places, specifically like Southern Honor, we've seen it at Disruptor, we've seen them in other places. So we're not surprised by this. And again, being so young and so new, again, I think, winning, by the way, one of the things I always tell people about winning these awarded action, the reason I think Action does a great job, their fans, I get it, it's a fan vote, but their fans are pretty, even the casuals are smart enough to recognize talent. And I think to win an award in that promotion, it's like it's even more of a stamp to kind of push you forward. When the people that run Action, Mac Rippon specifically, all those guys that run there, they can spot a young talent.
Yes.
Bobby Flacco, we just talked about like Bobby Flacco, yes. Right? I think again, these kind of things tie together. Winning this award is huge for Grayson Pierce, but doing it in Action, because they have that Action promotion has the ability to spot that young talent and say, where's this guy going to be 2 years from now? Not where's he going to be 6 months from now, 2 years from now, and and actually take that ability and push the kid to become who they think he can be within that time period.
I also think that having a site like SouthAtlantaWrestling.com consistently cover your promotion, consistently, write articles about various talents and give their thoughts on the show. I think that's a huge thing. I think a lot of those fans, they're a sponsor of the show, but obviously we cover a lot of we try to cover all the promotions, but I think if I'm a promotion, I'm trying to find that blog, that website, that podcast that is specifically kind of helping my fans understand kind of what we're trying to do.
So hold on. I want to ask you this. I'm going to piggyback on that. I think it's, and I know, like, here's what I always tell people. People always push back and go like, well, they don't sell any tickets and they don't do any. It's a tool and a resource. That's the way I look at it. Like us, I'm including us into this equation. Southern Honor has their own podcast. Gerard, Diana, and Brandon do their own podcast. Why more don't do that? I don't know. Look, we can only cover so many. And by the way, you want a little teaser? This is for a public show. It's probably going to be less this year than last year.
Yeah.
They'll be behind. We'll look on the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight on Patreon. Remind me when we record that episode, this week's episode. I'll explain why. I literally have a reason why. But anyway, to go back to the point, whether it's a blog, whether it's podcast, YouTube channel, whatever, I do. Like, why do you not have a recap show?
Yes.
That's specifically for yours to promote your brand. If you don't, look, I get it. Somebody's like, oh, aren't you kind of like hurting your own? And I'm like, no, I don't think I am. I don't think we are at all. And matter of fact, by the way, we would be open to like, hey, if you have any questions, hit us up. I mean, how to do things. I'll help. But I do, like you said, those guys doing that for them is a huge asset.
Correct. 100%. Finally, Donovan Thomas, somebody I'm not as familiar with, he was voted as the next competitor of the year. Again, these fans watch these young talents start up. They watch a lot of them compete, SCI futures and things like that. And so these are the Action fans are smart wrestling fans. They know good talent. And they are big. I mean, they are loyal to Action Wrestling.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a different fan base. There is a casual base there, but they're loyal and they're I hate saying like they're smart fans. They're informed fans.
Yes, informed. Yes, I think smart has. I did not mean that disparagingly in the least, but yes, you're right. Informed is good. Speaking of being informed, Disruptor also did their awards, and I love how they got the votes for these awards. Tell everybody this simple thing they did that more promotions should be doing.
We've talked about this in the past about, look, pre-selling tickets, selling them online in a form or fashion where like, hey, look, I've given away the site that we used for ours and they recommended it. Some people listen, some people don't, and that's fine. But when you do the pre-sales, you compile an email list, and it helps you get the information out. Like they do simple things like, hey, here's the next date for the show of the date of the next show, easy for me to say.
Mhm.
Tickets go on sale this date.
Mhm.
Little stuff like that. And they're like, oh, okay. And then it's like, when the tickets go on sale, hey, tickets are now available for, get your VIP tickets now, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So, well, when the season's over, they send out an email saying, hey, we're doing awards for these categories, submit your votes. I'll let you, because we had this conversation off the air. Like, why is that a good thing, right? Like, why is that because it's not just the casual fans. It's the people that are buying your tickets ahead of time. They're dedicated enough to your base they actually get their tickets ahead of time, so they're invested in your company and in your promotion and in your wrestlers.
I don't know why more promotions. One of the business sayings is the money is in the list, and your email list. Disruptor, by engaging their fans for these awards, have now piqued their fans' interest for their upcoming shows, because now they want to see their wrestlers. And now, because you've cared enough to engage with me, you've created a sense of loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's so many promotions. There's so many simple things promotions could be doing to build a better fan experience, to build more loyal fans. And I think Disruptor did a great job here. Their match of the year was one that you were live and in person for: Slim J versus Vari Morales in a Falls Count Anywhere match.
Absolutely insane match. This is one of the ones when we were having the conversation about, no nominations, this is one of the ones, that we talked about. Like, we were like, hey, this probably should have been into the mix, right?
Yes.
What wasn't there? And I was kind of like, I don't know why. Not really sure why. It is what it is. But I think these two guys on any given time could be a wrestler of the year.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
a Disruptor gives them a freedom to go out there and work, a style. And it's just what they did. By the way, that's the one where I don't know if you remember the coffin drop that he did. And it just, it's crazy. Slim's coffin drop, because they basically went up a post. It's essentially what it was, and did the coffin drop. Don't even get me that. I think that was up for like viral moment too. There was, they had the TikTok. It came in second, which we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, those two went out there and just absolutely, when they just want to have a match like this, like, hey, we want to send everybody home remembering our match.
Yeah.
They delivered. That's all I can say. Those two guys they're awesome.
No surprise that for Disruptor's technical match of the year, Slim J also in on that one, and it was his match with Alan Angels, which I heard was just absolutely maybe Alan Angels' best match in Georgia this year.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I would probably say that's probably right up there with it. And I'm not surprised. By the way, are we shocked that when we come to matches, Slim J's in both?
Not at all. Not at all. Slim J, I would not chant "You Still Got It" because he never lost it, but he still got it. Still one of the top guys. The moment of the year, which you and I were there for at Disruptor, Terry Lawler's Buford debut. Somebody who's been wrestling for decades but had never wrestled in his hometown, and it was a beautiful, fun moment to see.
Yeah, packed the house. Terry's a local guy there. Grew up, not too far from the building. And, it was a dream. I mean, like, again, it was all crazy for us because of my attachment to Terry all the way back to high school. And, I know a couple of times he had the chance to wrestle there and it just didn't work out for whatever reason. So it was cool to see that moment finally happen. And, hey, he drew a heck of a house that night, right? For everybody to get to see him wrestle at home.
Yeah, that's right. Another moment we were there for, the TikTok viral moment of the year. I like that, Disruptor. Was Jake Manning's the Man Scouts tent featuring Grandpa CB Suave and Joey Janela. That was such a fun match, but such a fun moment when all three are wrestling around in the tent and Grandpa got in there and made the count. Just a fun match.
The awards we've just went through kind of describe Disruptor to a T.
Yes.
Because it's like, hey, we had a crazy wild match with Slim J and Vari.
Mm-hmm.
We had a super technical match with Alan Angels and Slim J. And then they had the crazy wackiness that was, the CB Suave, Joey Janela Man Scout match, where the tent gets brought in and Grandpa's involved. So it's kind of literally like the embodiment of Disruptor right there in those first few awards we talked about. And it's where else can you go to see a match where you're like, oh, this is going to be, what are the kids? They're banger, man. It's going to be awesome. You're going to see Slim J and Alan Angels. Oh, by the way, on the same exact card, you're going to see this goofy wackiness. That's what I love about Disruptor. That's one of the things I like. It's all over the place and it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. The feud of the year, which to me, I don't know if it got any love on the Georgia Awards. It should have.
Yep.
Randy Wentworth and the Coyote Tim Miller, who literally their feud started on the first show of the year and went. There was something to do with this feud on every single Disruptor card, if I'm not mistaken.
And that's the story part. Like, hey, they don't do any stories. They do wacky, but they do it. They do a little bit of it. That's kind of the. And this story from beginning to end, like you said, by the way, and how it very smartly so, that base there absolutely loves Tim Miller.
Yes.
So it's a heck of a person to put to get behind for this story, and kudos. Look, Randy Wentworth, I was very unfamiliar with when the season started.
Yeah.
To now, like I'm like, wait, so he's got a YouTube channel, and he's got to find out more about him. He's an interesting cat to say the least, but again, I don't know, how'd this story work out? They absolutely love this guy, they hate this guy, and that's the hottest story from beginning to end of the season.
Yes, and it was absolutely incredible, and this did not involve one of Disruptor's titles. This involved, kind of Randy Wentworth's, what the influencer title or something like that. But the
verified championship, you had to be verified on TikTok, or Twitter, so X, whatever.
The way that they took, and I mean no disrespect, two guys that if they had not had this feud, they would kind of be lower mid card guys, right? Mm-hmm. But the fact that they put them in this story made it matter. And so every time either one of them was on the show, it meant something. And just great job by the team there at Disruptor. The Disruptor debut of the year, Rico Gonzalez. I think we were there for that. And he's somebody who's become a mainstay now.
Full disclosure, I was at every Disruptor show. So, I mean, so I've seen all of these moments. And, I absolutely – he was a newcomer to the season, came in and just stole the house, and he took home gold on the so he is your Eastern Seaboard champ. So I mean that was kind of that's a heck of a debut, right? Like your first run in, you're capturing gold.
And then the Disruptor Wrestler of the Year. No, I don't think there's a close second here. It was the Mexican rock star Vari Morales, who I think when you talk about Disruptor, he is kind of like that centerpiece. He is the cog in the wheel, and certainly somebody great to build a promotion around.
Yeah, and even albeit at the end of the season, with the dropping of the title, whatever, but that doesn't matter. I still think if you ask, and look, and I'm just my opinion from being there the whole entire season. Other guys can hold gold. Other guys can be in, storylines or whatever. I don't know that anybody embodies this disruptor more than Vari Morales.
Yeah.
Because let's go back to what we talked about when we talked about those initial awards. He can wrestle. Look, you could put Vari in a death match, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Right.
You can put him in a brawl. He does great. You can put him in a technical match. He's great. You put him in a lucha match. He does great. But at the same time, I get it. A lot of people don't feel this. He's hysterical. When you can actually sit there and talk to him, he's funny. So, he could do wacky if he wanted to. There is absolutely nothing that they do that he could not do. And so, like I said, that's why when he embodies it from top to bottom, it doesn't shock me that he's the wrestler of the year there at, Disruptor. By the way, and that's what the fans see.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, back up. Hold on. The loyal paying fans, that's what they see. And that's what they feel, obviously.
One of the things I loved about both the Action Award and the Disruptor Awards, they feel very tight, not too many, not too few, just the right amount. And they each have their own flavor, which brings me to, something about the Georgia Awards. What's to keep promotions from sending in nominations to the Georgia Wrestling Awards, almost like the Oscars? Hey, for your consideration, like if I'm a promoter or a booker, I am sending in at least 3 not for everything for my promotion. I'm sending in nominations for every category for the Georgia Wrestling History Awards. That's just me, though.
Yeah, look, you brought it up, like the Oscars. Why is it not like the promotions? Because here's the thing. By the way, it does 2 things in my opinion. One, you'll get like the promotions. They're going to back where the money's at.
Yeah.
They're going to vote for the guys they like. Okay, that's what you guys are doing. You should. I didn't want to say, originally I wasn't going to say this, but I was like, they should be voting. You should be voting for the best. But we've learned, when it comes to, it's not a political conversation, but when it comes to voting, we just stick to what we like or whatever, and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I think that at the core, I know it's hey, this is for the boys and they vote and da-da-da. I'm like, okay, I don't know that on a regular basis we trust people to vote in general elections, much less for stuff that for super subjective awards like wrestling awards. So I think promoters as a whole would try, and we would hope, would try to promote where the money is.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy made us the most money. By the way, especially from I come back to the Disruptor one for a reason. They do promo codes so they could tell you which wrestlers are selling tickets.
Yes.
The guy selling tickets gets pushed harder because he's selling tickets, whatever.
Yes.
So obviously they because they have a trackable form, they're not going by, we really like this guy. That's why, he's my buddy. Okay, well, if your buddy's not selling any tickets, at some point a smart businessman would go, all right, I'm going to push the other guy because he is selling me tickets.
Right.
That being said, so if the promoters, it would one, you would hopefully get honest feedback from promotions who they feel is wrestler, all that kind of stuff. We're not saying they have to go with it. We're just saying hey, we're requiring you to send in, your things. Why would I say that? Because then you're also going to find out who doesn't care.
Yes.
Because if they don't send anything, they don't care. You would at least get that answer. You wouldn't get a lot of, we don't care, but we're going to vote, or we vote, or blah, 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 or we care, but we don't vote, or blah, blah, blah. None of that would know. If they were required to send in something, you legit would know who cared because they would actually bother to send it in. If they didn't send it in, by the way, you would also have that ammunition if somebody started saying they didn't care. Well, if you didn't care, why'd you send your stuff in?
Right. And I think we're at a, no pun intended, a tipping point with the awards of it just feels weird because it's who cares and who doesn't. And it's if you say it all the time, I'll steal your words. If you don't care on January 1st, you shouldn't care on December 31st.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do care, don't, if you do care and you don't win, don't act like you didn't care. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with either one of those approaches.
Nope.
Let's move into something we haven't done in a while, the underappreciated and underrated, underappreciated. We've got some names we looked at and really looking back over all of 2024, I would say, moving in. And this first one is somebody we just talked about, and that is Vari Morales, who he's booked by Disruptor. He's booked by Turnbuckle. I think Mucha Lucha.
No,
Some of the big.
that's
Oh, he's
that's the
not
biggest
on Mucha?
misconception. So, and here's part of why I want to get out there.
Oh,
A
you know
lot of
what?
people go, he hasn't wrestled for Mucha Lucha in 2 years. I know a lot of people are like, oh, because he wrestles for Mucha. I'm like, clearly shows how much you pay attention because he hasn't wrestled in
Right.
over 2
I
years.
remember having that conversation now.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah. No. It's not just you. It literally, I have this conversation all the time. People say that to me, and I'm like, no, that clearly means you're not paying attention. And so that I admit immediately that anyway. But yes, that when that stuff happens, it makes me immediately kind of push back a little bit.
I would say Vari wrestled on more turnbuckle shows than some of the leading people for Georgia Wrestler of the Year wrestled, period.
1,000%.
I mean, he probably wrestled on 25 turnbuckle shows this year.
Yeah, I'd have to go look at but he wrestles constantly.
Yes. And I don't know if we've mentioned this. He's very good.
Yeah. No, 100%. That guy, in case you haven't noticed, we think the guy's really good at wrestling. He's not bad at it.
Yes.
That's simple.
I think it's safe to say if you and I owned a wrestling promotion in Georgia, Vari Morales would be a key component, and he would be in key storylines. We'd have him cutting promos. Dude, when that guy cuts a promo, you don't know if he's working or shooting.
Right.
Even when he's talking to us, I'm like, oh gosh. Anyway, he's great. Another underappreciated, I think, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. They ran 40, 50, who knows how many shows they ran. No nominations, no finalists in the Georgia Wrestling History Awards. QT Marshall, boom, left off the mentor list. Probably had more students wrestle or appear on TV this year than anybody else in Georgia. But it's almost like the wider Georgia wrestling community still isn't on board with what Turnbuckle's doing, and they don't care. But
No.
it just is what it is.
Yeah, especially like we're going to discuss them here again in a minute. Let's go with that. But I don't understand. Like I said, a lot of the there were so many things that I was like, what? Can we ask why? Like I guess I don't even understand. I go to I go to a lot of turnbuckle shows. I really do.
Yeah.
But I can't. Here's the crazy thing is, but I mean, we obviously can't go to them all. They run Watkinsville, they run McDonough, they run obviously Buford. Buford's simple, by the way. It's right by the house, so yeah, I'm going to go to that show. It makes it super easy. But as a whole, I don't understand like the talent that's on that show, top to bottom. You brought up like QT not getting any, mentor. Look, and I get it. A lot of people like. Again, I come back to this is a promotion that I 100% can say I don't think they care. I mean, they don't. I mean, it's
Right,
not a care.
right.
But that goes back to the same thing of us saying, hey, we're going to vote for our friends, or they don't count. Why? Like, why? Like, why do they not count? Oh, they don't
Right.
do this, or they don't do that, or whatever, anything. I'm like, is this the year where we start going, okay, so then we're going to start figuring out who counts and who doesn't count? And we just won't cover who we don't think counts.
Yes. Anyway, Turnbuckle. You got to get out to see him. CT Keys is a guy this year. I think underappreciated, underrated. Southern Fried champ, Wrestle America Tag champ. He was the Liberty champion, just lost that. He was Coastal Empire champ. Everywhere he went, everywhere he is an impact player. He was a big part of Southern Honor, especially during the War Chamber match. Why do you think CT Keys doesn't get the love?
I have no idea. I mean, I've 100%. Look, I'll steal Myron's line. One of the things he loves to say is he'll look at certain guys and go, guy looks like a wrestler.
Yes.
Like, when CT walks into a room, you're like, okay, he's either a football player, he's a wrestler, like, he's an MMA fight, something like he's an athlete. We all look at him and go, guy's an athlete, some form or fashion. But when he gets into the ring, we're like, that's a guy. Like, that's a man's man in the ring, right? Like, that's a dude that you're like, oh, he is. And by the way, we made jokes about it when it was happening. Like, I kept saying, I went on this rant for the beginning of the year about why is he not booked in more places and whatever. And the next thing I know, it's like, oh, Coastal Empire books him, and he first match, he takes the title. Goes into, he goes into Wrestle America, and then swoop, he's a tag champion. And I'm like, well, maybe promotions are scared to bring him in because he's swooping in belts left and right when he comes in. Southern Honor, I think his days as a champion are sooner than later. That's just that's my opinion. But I don't get why he's not mentioned more. When you get into those Wrestler of the Year and stuff, like, he had a heck of a year. Like, where was his love? I don't know. But that gets into the who qualifies, who doesn't, and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. Another guy, again, top guy at Southern Honor, always a mainstay at Southern Pride, was the heavyweight champ, tag team champ. That's Judas, a guy who just he's always a top guy. Was booked as he's been at Bullpen, was a top guy, and just so many great things that he does and brings to the show, but just doesn't seem to get the appreciation that a lot of others get.
I think here's what I think with Judas. Like you said, he was the last champ that Southern Honor had before the current champion. He was the last champ at Southern Fried before the current champ they have. And everywhere he goes, he's literally a guy you could bring him in on his first appearance, and you could be like, he's got a name in Georgia that's enough to, like, hey, he's going to wrestle our champion on the first show. And nobody would go, well, why? Like, oh, never mind. We got it. We understand. But I think has he, question to you, Heath, because you're kind of, new to the scene here, right? In the last year or so, has he done this so well for so long that, like, we joked about promotions that do so good for so long that it's just kind of like, oh, that's who they are. Is that who he is? He's like, oh yeah, he is a top guy, but we like the shiny new toy more than we like the guy who's been doing it forever.
Yeah, and Judas is really a throwback. Super big guy, wrestles that style, that tough, stiff style, and there's so many fans that are into they want to see the athleticism and the speed and the flips and that kind of stuff. And then you got Judas, who's just kind of a bull in a china shop. But
that's what I like. I like a believable style. Like, when Judas wrestles a match, everybody goes, oh, it would look like a fight. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what it's supposed to be, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. So again, I think, that's why we're saying he's underappreciated. That, and then finally, a promotion that we just talked about, I think they're underrated and underappreciated, and that is Disruptor. Ben Bishop is wrestling various places in Georgia now, introduced to Georgia through Disruptor. They have brought in so many there's been people wrestle at Disruptor this year that have not wrestled anywhere else in Georgia. They've given us different matchups. Slim J and Vari Morales, Slim J and Alan Angels. I guess Slim J probably wrestled at Disruptor more than anywhere else in Georgia this year.
It'd be close. It would be close to figure out. I know he did. Trying to remember how many matches he did at IWE. I can't remember, but yeah. But I would think it's by far, it's probably where he wrestled at the most. I know he was at that show, probably more than, because even he was doing some stuff backstage. So, so he was there even when he wasn't. So there was that. They brought in AJ Francis.
That's right.
The TNA Digital Champion at the time defended it was actually an official defense. I think he was it Jake Manning. I think that's who he defended the TNA Digital title against. I mean, think about that at Tannery Row in Buford at Disruptor Wrestling, and again, not that they care, nor should. I mean, it is what it is. Not even a peep when it comes to anything, It just kind of throws up question marks at times, but that's.
Do you think Disruptor and Turnbuckle are seen as outsiders in George wrestling?
Maybe. Are they outside the system? That may be a different question.
Because the people on the teams aren't connected to any other promotion. I just think that's a whole nother Patreon episode right there. That's a $10 level right there. We can talk about that. Let's talk about, that's who's underappreciated, underrated, underappreciated. Now let's talk about the hot hand. It is the start of 2025. Who are the talents and promotions who are heading in with lots of momentum that you got to keep your eye on this year? Number one is a young man who the snow postponed a wonderful opportunity at the Southern Honor heavyweight title, and that is Alexander Lev. He is currently the new Legacy champ, number one contender in Southern Honor. He was the Georgia Heritage champ. He's a top guy at Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment and getting ready to launch January 25th, Total Aggression Pro there in Royston. Alexander Lev has gone from Rookie of the Year, did not suffer the sophomore slump, and now is getting ready to go to a whole nother level here in year 3.
Yeah, I think he's got all the potential in the world to take that next step. If he can go in there and if he can defeat Joe Black, then he's going to be. You have to start asking yourself the questions. He's a champion here. Oh, by the way, let's not forget they stolen the viral tag team championships. So he's starting to become a guy who's a player. That's where you kind of like to see where it's not. Hey, I was going to say with no disrespect, but maybe there is. Just because you wrestle a bunch of places doesn't make you like, hey, I'm a top guy. I wrestle for 8 promotions. If you're a player,
yes,
in multiple promotions, that's what makes you a player. That's what makes you like hey, this is somebody that needs to be in the conversation, and he's doing just that because we just rattled off, 4 or 5 places where like, hey, he's a player here, he's a player here, da 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 da. So yeah, I think he's really got a lot of momentum heading into 2025, and could this be the year? It could be.
And did we mention he stole the viral titles with a guy who's on the WWE ID deal? Maybe we should mention that. So Alexander Lev is going places in 2025. Bullpen Championship Wrestling launched in early 2024, and they have been so consistent in their were their average crowds bigger than everybody else or than a lot of the other big players in Georgia?
I would say yeah.
Very consistent, basically opening up a whole new territory there in West Georgia, East Alabama, but very consistent. And if they can keep it up, I think they're a player for more awards in 2025.
I was kind of surprised they didn't get more. I think they're up for promotion or something like that. I think they are up for whatever. They're up for something, but
promoter of the year for
sure. Something. Yeah, I would have thought something that they would be. I really like how Bull is. A lot of guys use Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
but the shows that he does, like he's got kind of a setup show that he does on Facebook. Andy comes on and talks about stuff. So I like some of the tools they're using it as. I really like when promotions use social media, like not just for posting
Mm-hmm.
things, but like using it as a promotional tool in the grand scheme of things. I enjoy that, and I think they're doing a pretty good job of it. I just thought because here's the thing: even the building that they were drawing, and that they're like, oh, well, they only drew two. Okay, it's a small building. Like
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't really fit too many more people. It's like, yes, they only did 250, 270, whatever it was, but like the building's built to hold like 275, 300, like in that range or whatever. They maxed the building out, but they are also regularly drawing crowds in the 400s consistently, and so that's kind of I think what we were talking about.
Yes, yes, yes. They've got big things planned. Another promotion again. We just talked about them. Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. Uh, they ran probably maybe more shows than anybody in 2024 and are on pace and scheduled to do even more shows in 2025. And we, the word is going to see some more tie-ins, some more angles. We're already seeing that with the Super Wild and Jack Jameson feud that's been going back and forth. Um, but if you didn't know, fans, we're big fans of Turnbuckle.
Yeah, I think some of I don't it's not my place to announce shows or anything like that, but the number of shows we're hearing that they're going to put out there, like they're going to be everywhere. My prediction is they'll probably run more shows than anyone else in the state of Georgia. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the case, give or take. Based on calculations, I think they are. So you can do the math and at least kind of give a barometer of how many that is. But if they start again, don't know that they care, and I don't mean
Mm-hmm.
that to disrespect awards or anything. I just say I don't know that they care. But if they tie in stories and they're starting to
Mm-hmm.
move those stories around and whatever, I think there are going to be people that should be considered for things. Um, Promoters and bookers and blah blah, all that kind of stuff. Some other cool things that we're hearing might be coming down the pike. I'm really excited to see what they're going to come at, and I just think right now, um, I think the 2025. I made the comment a while back. I said the only thing that could stop Turnbuckle, and it was funny. I got a bunch of messages. Well, what is it? And I'm like, dude, it's real simple. It's themselves. The
That's
only thing
right.
that will stop them is if they choose not to run. Like if they do what they want to do and they, put out their best efforts into it,
Right.
they're gonna do well in 2025.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Somebody else who ended 2024, especially the second half. I don't think anyone in Georgia had a better second half in 2024 than Carly Bravo. You want to talk about somebody being not just a guy at the promotion he works at, but being the guy, in top spots, being a title holder, and he continues to improve. And the sky is the limit for this guy.
What's my? I've got my quote written down in the notes. If he counts, he's the best wrestler in Georgia, right? Like
Yeah,
if he's a Georgia wrestler, you know. So when we do our Patreon exclusive, you'll hear my argument whether I think he counts or not. That's the key, right? Because I just said if he counts, he's the best wrestler in Georgia. But we'll see if Nick thinks he qualifies over on the Patreon exclusive, patreon.com/tapped-out-pod when we get that recorded. But everybody knows years now. I've been on the
hmm
Carly Bravo train. Got to see him wrestle in, small buildings in front of, 30 people. I've gotten to now see him wrestle, in Athens, Georgia, in the Aikens Ford Arena in front of a couple thousand people. So,
yeah.
and I think the world of the guy. So, yeah, it's I think right now Georgia is Carly Bravo's to take in 2025 with the time
hmm
that he has available to give Georgia.
Yes. I think, yeah, this again, the sky's the limit for Carly Bravo. Finally, a guy who has been everywhere, a guy who just, I mean, running roughshod. Is this a I mean, he's doing everything, and now can add deathmatch icon to his list of accomplishments, and that is Matt Griffin. Uh, he's just on fire. Took out Gary Lamb at Southern Honor along with Gunnar Miller. Um, Action
I love.
Wrestling.
Hold on. I'm gonna
Yeah,
pump the brakes on something. I love how
yeah.
you added with Gunnar Miller. Okay, like that wasn't like a key piece to the equation. But go ahead. Yeah, I
Correct.
got it. Yeah, he took out Gary Lamb with Gunnar
I
Miller.
mean,
I was
I
like,
mean, Gunnar Miller did most of the work.
yeah,
It's safe to say, but it's clear. Matt Griffin is the mastermind behind so many things that are going on in Georgia this year, and I think that's the thing is who has more influence in Georgia right now than Matt Griffin? It's absolutely crazy. Action Wrestling started running more shows this year. They've got two shows coming up back to back weekends that we'll get to. He is everywhere in Georgia. He's trying to shut down deathmatch wrestling. Uh, but he just continues just to I'm not surprised at where he pops up these days.
no, he stuck his nose in at Southern Fried. That didn't quite go so well for him, but he did.
Right.
Look, it took a beating. All the credit in the world. Took a absolute beating at the Blood and Honey Series deathmatch next, but he's the deathmatch icon. He's 1-0. Go with that. So it is what it is, folks. Look, we people that are 1-0 at stuff, we will bang that drum and hey, retired out 1-0. But yeah, and then here's the craziest thing is the rockiest situation you might argue that he's in is in his own home stomping grounds there at Action, where he's got a
Correct.
lot
Yes.
on his plate, But here's the thing: it may be rocky, but it's doing really well because the fans are wanting to see what's going on.
Yes. Here's the thing: is a lot of the fans absolutely despise Matt Griffin, but they're paying attention to Matt Griffin.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, that's what matters. And at this point, he has given you no choice but to pay attention to him. Um, so that's our hot hand for this week. Stay tuned. Now that we're doing the different format, you're going to see more Power Five hot hand, underappreciated, underrated, and all of that good stuff. Again, if you want to listen to the new Georgia Wrestling Spotlight, which is the past shows and the upcoming shows. You can only find that at patreon.com/tapped-out-pod. It's free. You're going to get that show for free every week. But then if you become a paid member, you're going to get so much content, like so much content. I got stuff I haven't even uploaded yet that I need to get uploaded. Um, and we're always, Nick and I have lives, but we spend a lot of time thinking about talking about this wrestling stuff and always coming up with new ideas. We're never satisfied with where we are and always talking about how to bring more value to our patrons. But we're also grateful for all of our YouTube subscribers. If you're listening to this somewhere and you're like, YouTube, you guys are on YouTube, tappedoutpod.com is where you can go and watch that every single week. You get this. I would say, we're the only weekly podcast that covers Georgia independent wrestling, right?
yes. And I'm throwing a question mark on there. If we're not tapped out wrestling, tappedoutpod.com. Let us
I
know.
would, I would, I would love to listen to any other credible, credible podcast that talks about Georgia indie wrestling. That talks about it, kind of how we do. I'd love to hear their take on stuff. But listen, fans, if you really want the real deal, it's here at the Tapped Out Podcast Network. We're week 2 of Raw on Netflix. Any insight into what you and Myron are going to discuss on the big show this week?
I mean, look, I think to be all fair with it, I think they came back down to reality a little bit, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I think it's you know, it is what it is. I put a comment out this morning, and when I looked this morning, and I haven't looked in the last 4 or 5 hours, Raw was not one of the top 10 U.S. shows. It was last week. For a long stretch it was. What does that mean? I think, here's the thing. Netflix isn't required to give us that number if they don't want to, I don't think. So
right.
I think we'll find out if we don't get a mention of what the number is. I don't, again, folks, I think we're over making it over importance of what that first number means. I think we're going to dive into that a little bit about what we think of that. But look, there is some ties on the national show to the Indy show. I don't know if you saw. Go on YouTube. MLW ran the Kings of Coliseum 2025 show, and I think the ramifications of the Gravity Gamble ladder match that they did, I think does have some ramifications for Georgia Indie Wrestling. I'll leave it at that. So check out the Tapped Out Wrestling podcast and see how those two things tie in together a little bit. By the way, if you did not watch the show, you should go over to the MLW YouTube channel and watch. It's the Kings of Coliseum 2025. That was a very good episode. They're doing a lot of free stuff on their YouTube channel, and it was a good show top to bottom. They did crown a new MLW champion in Matt Riddle. So yeah, exactly. That was like raising your eyebrows. And now when you find out who won that ladder match, you'll see why I think it's a really cool thing for the Georgia indie wrestling scene.
Well, I saw the link to that and had not checked it out yet, but I will definitely do that, and you should too. So, fans, thanks for all your support. Thanks for watching. Hey, no snow predicted this weekend, so get out, support indie wrestling, and maybe, just maybe, we'll see you at the matches.